In today's video, we're jumping back to our NHL Offseason Plan series. Today, we analyze the 22nd ranked team from the regular season, the Buffalo Sabres. Will they be able to make some moves that end this playoff drought? The last couple of years have been better, but still not good enough. What changes should we expect? We'll discuss that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, today we're analyzing the Buffalo Sabres in our NHL Offseason Plan series. Now, if you're new to this series, essentially what we do is we start by recapping the previous season, so the 23-24 campaign. We'll look at some key team and individual stats, explore how this team changed throughout the campaign, look at their cap space, expiring contracts, what do they have for draft picks, that type of thing, and we'll analyze what we should expect from them by looking at the top questions facing the franchise this offseason. So let's get started first by recapping last year and taking a look at how this team did and why did it fail to meet expectations again and continue this drought of being a non-playoff team. They finished with a record of 39, 37, and 6 for 84 points. They scored 244 goals for 23rd best. They had a lot of players individually take major steps back in their production, which was a major contributor to that as well. Goals against was actually pretty good, 243 for 11th best, especially considering there was, I guess some flux within their goaltending position of who was going to be the starter. Looks like they gave Devin Levi every opportunity early on. Things were not going well. It took a little bit before UPL kind of got established as kind of having the net for a good stretch of time there, which he did very well for them. The power play was not good at all, 16.6%, 29th best considering the skill they have. That's not good enough and nowhere near expectation. The penalty kill was average, was certainly respectable, 79.8. So again, metrics that involve keeping the puck out of your net, amazingly pretty good and about, either slightly above league average in a couple of those cases. But offensively, which is something that they were used to excel at, it was not good enough. So I guess you could say previously they were stronger offensively. I'm sure that as a team and the coaching staff probably put more of an emphasis on the defensive game, but it really took away from their offense. They just weren't able to balance things out. Looking at their individual performances, they were led by Alex Tuch and Rasmus Dahlin, who both tied for 59 points. When your leading scorer has 59 points, that is telling right there just how poor of an offensive team you really were. Alex Tuch had 79 points the year before, so his production down by 20 points. Rasmus Dahlin, he did have a 20-goal season. Still lots to like about his game in his full campaign this year, but he had 59 points, which is still very respectable. But the year before, he had 73, so just another case of a top player having some regression in their output. Tage Thompson was a major regression here and certainly had a big role in his team taking a step back. In 22-23, he put up a whopping 47 goals and 94 points. Looked like he was going to be, consistently in that 40-plus goal range and 90 to 100 points. Seemed to be something that fans were hoping they could count on, and it was not. He regressed from 47 down to 29 and down to 56 points. That's almost 30 points less and close to 20 goals less. That's substantial for Tage Thompson. He did miss a little bit of time, but still, that's, what version of Thompson are we going to get this year? Big version, big question mark, should say, to really know what the team will do. JJ Peterka was one of the few players who actually made big improvements. He went from 32 points up to 50 and scored 28 goals. He was a nice revelation to really solidify himself as being somebody who can play consistently in that top six, a really good second-line player. Dylan Cousins, another player who had regressed. He only had 47 points this year after last year when he put up 31 goals and 68 points. Jeff Skinner had a super regression, 46 points this year, whereas the year before he had 82. That's just ridiculously, like all their top guys regressing. I mean, that's not something you would think you would see, but it happened. And that's why the team was so low in goals for and so low in power play. They just could not click. And maybe some of that was coaching. Maybe that's just the way they were playing. I don't know. It you can't have that all happen at one time. It's a killer. It's amazing that they were. I mean, as much as they missed the playoffs and their playoff drought continued, obviously it's not like they were like super out of the way off the mark here. They missed by like, what is it, 5 or 6 points. So it's not like the year before they missed by like 1, I think it was. So they did step back, but considering all things, the defensive improvements and goaltending improvements certainly made them hang in there more than you would think. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen finally had a good run with the net here, finished with a record of 27, 22, and 4, had a .910 save percentage and a 2.57 goals against. If he can maintain that next year and they can start to score some more goals like they're capable of, I don't think this team really needs a ton of change, but certainly maybe some tweaks and obviously a new coach, and they should be able to be right in the mix, I would think. Throughout the year, let's take a look at some of the changes we saw with this team. One of the bigger moves was trading Casey Mittelstadt ahead of the deadline to the Avalanche for young defenseman Bo Byram. That was a pretty good trade. I think that's worked out pretty good for both sides so far. They traded captain Kyle Okposo to Florida. They get a 7th rounder back for him. After signing Eric Johnson to a 1-year free agent deal, moved him to Philly for a 4th rounder. Traded goalie Devin Cooley to the Sharks for a 7th rounder, and he found some good success. And as soon as the season was over, Kevin Adams, the GM, was wasting no time in relieving head coach Don Granato of his duties. And they did not waste any time in hiring a new coach, which is what's old is new again, and former Sabres longtime head coach Lindy Ruff, who had recently departed his head coaching job throughout the campaign with the New Jersey Devils. So they've already got the head coaching question answered, and answered quickly. I know some people really wondered why Lindy Ruff, when there were so many other high-profile names on the market. You could tell that Kevin Adams did not interview other people. There was such a short window of time between relieving Granato and hiring Ruff that they probably already started talking to Ruff before Granato was even gone. So that's the only big part about this is I wonder, is Ruff the right guy? I'm not entirely convinced that he is. He's not a bad coach. He's got lots of experience, obviously well connected to that market, lots of history with the team, but that doesn't make him the best choice. So we'll see, I guess. So lots of changes throughout the year, but nothing too substantial, with the most substantial one being the coach being removed and Mittelstadt for Byram. Other than that, just a few veterans out for some later round picks. Salary cap-wise, they're in good shape, but they do have a lot of contracts to get settled or replace this offseason. They get $23.2 million in available salary cap space, and they have 12 contracts on the books for next year. So they have a decent amount of restricted and unrestricted free agents, and we'll take a look at those players now. Obviously, you're looking at signing at least 10, maybe 11 players. When you break that down on $23 million, that doesn't really give you that much. Thankfully, most of the players that are up for new contracts are not going to be players that would command big raises, and unless they want to go on the market here and shake things up, which we'll talk about here in a few minutes. But on the RFA list, we've got Jack Quinn, we've got Henry Jokiharju, Jacob Bryson, Cale Clegg, goaltender Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, and defenseman Riley Stillman. I would think that there's a good possibility that all of their restricted free agents are brought back. I know UPL will be for sure. Quinn for sure. The others, I guess, maybe there's some degree of question. Obviously, they're all defensemen. I don't know that they'd actually, they may not all be back. It's hard to say because their top 4 defense are pretty well spoken for now, right? You've got Rasmus Dahlin, you've got Owen Power, you got Matthias Samuelsson, and you get Bo Byram. So that only leaves a couple of spots. All 4 of those guys have a decent amount of NHL experience, not to mention some other players in their system. So I guess it's more likely that you might not. I don't know which ones they'll bring back, which ones they won't. But I guess they'll have to decide who they feel is the better options for the third pair. I mean, Jokiharju has been more of a mainstay than the others. I would think he would probably have the better chance, but we'll see. On the UFA side, you got Victor Olofsson. Olofsson's had some rumors around him for the past 2 years of being moved on, so I don't suspect he'll be back. You got Zegmas Girgensons, who's been there a long time, Tyson Jost, Eric Robertson, goalie Eric Comrie, and veteran Dustin Tokarski. I would think that Girgensons maybe comes back, possibly. The rest of them all will likely walk. There's no need to bring back Comrie or Tokarski. Jost hasn't done a lot. I mean, I guess Robinson filled in decently as a depth option after they picked him up due to injuries later in the season. But do they have a spot for him when they're not dealing with a bunch of injuries? I'm not sure. So maybe, but unlikely. Olofsson, like I said, with all the rumors around him for the past 2 years, I can't see him re-signing in Buffalo. So Girgensons is a possibility, but otherwise, that's about it. So you're probably, out of all these expiring contracts, you're probably looking at, probably 3, maybe 4 of the RFAs and maybe 1 of the UFAs. That's going to put them up around 17 contracts. Then, of course, you got some other internal options, for ELC players, rookies that might have a chance to make the team. They still have some good prospects trying to move up the ranks here. And then you'll probably have a little bit of movement via trade or free agency. Of course, looking at the 2024 NHL Draft, they are picking 11th overall. They have 8 picks total in the draft. The 11th overall pick, they could get themselves a pretty good player. It's hard to say how they're going to go about this because clearly this is a time when they're trying to win now. They're trying to get into the playoffs. Will they trade that pick for an impact player? That's one of the top questions that I think the team needs to decide, and they have time to think about it. If you look at the draft projections and who they might be able to get, there's some good talented players there. There's no doubt. Obviously, they're going to have an option. They'd probably prefer a forward at this point because I think a lot of their D spots are for the next number of years are spoken for, unless they feel like they can get one that's going to be an even bigger upgrade. But for the most part, they probably would select one of the better forwards available at that spot if they choose to hold on to the pick. And it's kind of hard to say on who might be on the board still, but I do think a real possible opportunity here would be to trade that pick, maybe have to package it with something else to bring in an impact player. Obviously, one of the big questions that they were going to be facing was the coaching, and I guess the question now is not who the coach will be, but is he the right coach, and will it work out with Lindy Ruff? Certainly looking at his other opportunities, New Jersey was a similar type of situation as Buffalo. A lot of youth, a lot of talented young players trying to work their way up. And they had saw some spurts, but it wasn't sustainable. So that's why I question if he's the right coach. But we'll see. At the end of the day, that's a massive question we're not going to know the answer to until we have a chance to see what he brings in. Of course, we got confirmation of his coaching staff in the last couple of days with Seth Appert, who was one of the candidates that were kind of rumored about once that we knew Granato was not returning. And of course, he has the head coaching role in their American Hockey League team, done a good job down there, and he will be joining the team as an assistant. Otherwise, pretty well everybody else is back. Some of the roles have changed a little bit, but they didn't really move on from anybody, which I also found a little bit surprising. So we'll see. Obviously, the goaltending situation is a major question mark as well. They have to get UPL signed. Clearly, he's earned the net, and he's earned a good contract, so I hope they look after him. I think he was probably a little slighted that he was overlooked to start the year, and all they kept going back to Levi, until they finally sent him down. So we'll see what they do in that front. They got to get him signed, and they have to decide, is Levi going to spend a full year in the minors and just be the guy there and give him some time and maybe bring in a veteran to work with UPL for the year? That would probably be a good idea. That's why I don't think Comrie or Tokarski is that guy. They won't be back. But, at the same time, there's lots on the market. So I do wonder how they handle the goaltending situation, and I would recommend bringing in a veteran guy. At the very least, it just gives Levi some more competition. It's not handed to him. It's rare you see a college goalie as good as he was in college step right into the NHL and have immediate success without putting some time in the minors to develop. I still think he's got a lot of potential long-term and will challenge UPL at some point for that net, but I think it's might be better to have some backup plans in place in case he's not quite there yet. Obviously, like I said, you have to find a way to reignite this offense. Coaching change could do that. Obviously, we'll see what Lindy Ruff puts in for how he wants them to play, how he sees this lineup working together, and what can they add to it. Could they have obviously the 11th overall pick, like I said, could be traded for an impact player. If they did that, it would probably be somebody in a forward position, obviously like an impact top 6 guy. Could they target Patrick Kane is a UFA. I mean, there's a lot of speculation that Detroit may not re-sign him. Would he want to come home finally to the Sabres? And maybe because I know it sounds like wherever he does go, he's going to want a multi-year deal. And he proved last year just how well he can play, and that obviously he's healed well from that injury. I don't think there'd be too many teams that are reluctant to give him, maybe 2 to 3 years. I don't know what he wants. If he wants more than that, that might be a problem. But clearly, Kane back to the Sabres, if he sees them taking a jump like he saw with Detroit last year, I do wonder if that could be a possibility. He could be a real good veteran to come in and help that group. Now, what his desire is, we don't know. But at the end of the day, it's a case of, would Kane come back? If they sign Kane and then they trade it 11th overall for an impact forward, that could be a couple of pieces right there to really ignite this offense. Because if they can maintain the defensive side of the game they did last year and build the offense back up to what it could be, they could be a real dangerous team and no doubt compete for a wild card spot for sure. I mean, depending on what we see in the Atlantic Division, I don't know if it's going to be able to get any higher than that just yet. But it's possible, I guess. I mean, we don't know. Like, it's been time. Is Tampa or Boston going to take some steps back? And they just keep showing you think it's going to happen, but then they prove you wrong year after year. So, teams like Buffalo, teams like Ottawa, teams like Detroit, it's going to be tough to get up into that top 3. Eventually, we'll probably see a shift in tide here, but it's just going to be a little bit before we get there. So, really, what can they do? But I think this team is still missing just a little bit in the forward group, and they need to sort out the goaltending so the pressure's off of Levi. They get their coach. Otherwise, I think that's probably where we stand. It's just, can they get a guy like Kane or somebody to come in and really help move this team forward? Obviously, last year, Kevin Adams did pretty much nothing, and that did not work out for him. So I suspect we're going to see some more overall. I wouldn't completely rule out seeing some trades, too, to kind of shake up the roster a little bit. But hard to say. I know there's been some speculation, according to the fourthperiod.com. They're getting a lot of interest in Mattias Samuelsson on the back end, but they've proven so far that they're reluctant to do that. They'd have to have an offer that would just kind of blow them away before they would do that. They really like Samuelsson, and certainly a big part of their decor. So we'll see. Wouldn't rule out a guy like Peyton Krebs. Maybe he could be a guy that might move to find another opportunity. Things haven't worked out the greatest for him. Would they want to try to move on from a veteran to shake things up? I don't know. I mean, who's the next captain? It's another question they have to look at going into the season as well. So let me know your thoughts and expectations on the Buffalo Sabres down in the comments. What moves do you expect? And can those moves get them over the hump to finally break that playoff drought and get them into the playoffs next year? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.